I'm going to introduce them here at the outset, and then they'll simply take turns when it's their opportunity to present. Drew Lakuta is right in front of me this evening, PhD, a faculty associate, and professor of kinesiology from the School of Education at UW-Madison. He made the trip from Oregon, Wisconsin, that happens to be, but he has done this presentation for Spring Green, Reedsburg, Richland Center, and Sauk Prairie. And you who are hearing this tonight will leave as those of those communities did, better informed. I think you'll be inspired. Drew, it's great to have you back, and thank you for the time you're giving us. Sitting next to Drew is Tara Noy. Tara is a tobacco specialist and health educator at the Juneau County Health Department. She is also the coordinator for the South Central Wisconsin Tobacco Free Coalition. We enjoy the opportunity to work with Tara. She has incredible enthusiasm, great knowledge. Anytime we want something on the air, we call her and she is absolutely willing to oblige. And she would be the same with you. You'll benefit from her presentation tonight. Dr. Wright, I don't believe is here yet. His schedule is always one that's hard to track. But Dr. Andrew Wright's an incredible asset in our community. He has been at a variety of programs like this throughout the year. He is a family physician and an addiction medicine practitioner at the Richland Medical Center. We'll benefit greatly from Dr. Wright. Sergeant Melby, I don't believe, has arrived yet either, but will from the Richland County Sheriff's Department. Certainly our law enforcement officers see this issue every single day. They see the heartaches, they see the headaches, and Kevin will be here later on and will benefit from that as well. To my left is Betsy Raisler, who is a health educator at Richland County Health and Human Services. She provides support for the Partners for a Drug-Free Richland County, and I will say this about Betsy Raisler. She is fearless and she is tireless when it comes to protecting health. Yours, your children, mine, this school district, this county, and beyond. So Betsy, thank you very, very much. And several of you we went in the hidden in plain sight room, and we realized what our schools are facing today. Our first speaker, I think, really helps us set the stage very well for what we're going to learn about tonight. And it will put into practice and really give us a point of reference for what Drew and Tara and Betsy and Dr. Wright will say as we hear from Chris Lechner, who is the principal of Ithaca Schools. I think about the challenge that we give our schools in educating our children and taking good care of them, and then I see the kinds of issues that they deal with every single day. They deserve our support. Chris, we're certainly pleased to be a guest at your school tonight and have the opportunity to benefit and learn from what you have to share. Ladies and gentlemen, Ithaca Principal Chris Lechner.
Thank you very much. First off, we'd like to thank the PTSO for providing the great food that we have, and also for Oakwood Orchards for the wonderful apples that we have and everything else. So thank you very much to everybody. What I'm going to do is just run through this real quick. I've been involved with, I guess, schools and vaping and drugs and stuff for a very long time. I've seen the damage it can do. And no matter what law enforcement does, people come up with all new ways to do things. It really has to come from us, the parents, to work with the kids and everything else. And I went to a seminar last week over in Appleton. The guy's called the Tall Cop. He's a 6'9" black man who is really a big man. And he's been all over the country. He puts on a great, great seminar. And his tagline is, we can't stop what we don't know. So what I want to do real quickly is just kind of go through a lot of things that you guys might be seeing at the mall, around your house. I also want to talk about some of the terminology that is used because, you know, sometimes the kids talking a little bit of a different language. So if we can put the first one up. This one, you know, let's be honest, we're being bombarded. The kids are being bombarded about drugs and drug advertising and things like that. What I want you to particularly notice is the crown in the upper right. Okay, when you see a hat with a crown on it, more often than not, it has a stash area inside the hat. It's also advertising that I'm interested in drugs or I may be holding drugs. The one on the left is just a tennis shoe that shows As we looked through the tennis shoe, it had a bunch of different stash areas on it. I'll show you another one where the stash is right in the tongue. If you go to the next slide then. Here are some examples of the vaping tools on your left. I actually have that one, this one, and this one that we've taken out of our school. We took 3 out just today. So there's a lot of people doing it, and they're not listening to what people are telling them about the popcorn lungs and everything else. The thing on the right, anytime you see 2 styrofoam cups together, that's really about Robitussin and Sprite, that they're drinking that, and they're showing people that they're very interested in that. Some of the things you hear called is scissor, dirty Sprite, leaning, ACT. It's a depressant. It works for withdrawals. Delsin is 2 times as strong as Robitussin. Slang is triple C, Skiddling, Robo-Tripping, DGK, Dirty Ghetto Kids. And I say these terms so that if you guys see it on a text, or if you hear some of the kids talking about, it kind of rings the bell that they're not talking about the Skittles candy normally. Next slide. Again, the Aliens logo is again advertising that you have drugs or you're interested in drugs. Must have missed that one there. Hold on a second. Yeah. Again, the 5 stars. Long time ago, I worked at Lincoln Hills, dealt with a lot of gang activity. That would have been the Latin Kings that I would have seen were representing or flagging. But now it's really into the drug trade. The seedless thing, that's a stash pocket right inside the shorts. We can go on to the next one. Here's the ones with the aliens. That's a belt. The belt buckle actually is a can opener, and inside the belt there's 2 to 3 different stash areas, so you would never know that. But the alien symbol is telling other people that I either have drugs or I'm interested in drugs. And again, we have the 5 stars on the right. These are some different vaping tools. Again, a little better one. This one was very interesting. I had never seen that. It looks like an Apple Watch. Actually, you pull the stylus out and that is your pipe. So that's actually a vaping tool right there. I had not seen that one before. Oops. Go on to the next one. Again, different ones. And at the seminar I was at, it was we had a lot of state patrol officers, so they were talking about different ways that they look for things when they're pulling somebody over. And you know, this looks just like a regular credit card. Actually, when you squeeze it in between, it's a stash area for dabs and stuff like that. So I'll go into that a little bit more. The hairspray, I think, was in one. The big deal is if you see something that you think isn't quite right, the best way to tell if it's a stash container, if it's liquid, is that there is a bubble of air on the bottom and on the top. Now a normal soda won't have that, or any other liquid form. So that's just one way to kind of look at it. Sprayground is pretty high end, but the Sprayground, the backpacks, when you really look through it, you open the zippers, there's zippers inside the zippers. So it's a big, big stash place for a backpack, and they're actually quite expensive. I did see one of these 2 weeks ago. Looks like a car key. When you hit the little silver button, the pipe thing pops out, and that's a vaping thing. You would never guess that out of seeing that. Go ahead. Again, you can see different ways that they have stash things. I think in our hidden in plain sight in the other room, I think we have a couple of those. All right, go ahead. And this, again, just shows the hat. A lot of times, you knew that this would pull out from right under the brim. That's a stash area. We'll get to another one that it's actually up in the top of it. Pretty tough to see that. I hadn't seen that in a while. All right. And here's some of the logos that we're talking about. Trap, you know, around here, that's a really nice club we have. We have a great trap club around here. But if you're walking in the malls in Milwaukee or Green Bay or Madison and you see that, you know that guy is interested in drugs. And then the top hat, you know, it wouldn't be appropriate for schools, but that's normally you would think that's Crown Royal, that's a liquor. But actually what it's saying is that it has grass. On to the next one there. And these are some of the really in plain sight cookies. Years ago I saw those and I thought it was a Cookie Monster to start with. But again, the kids that are wearing that, more often than not, are advertising that they're interested in drugs or they're holding drugs. And that's just a very easy way to do it. Everyone goes, how do these kids find drugs? How do they know who's got the drugs? This is a good way to do it. So that's why they're working so hard advertising what they're trying to do. Okay? And again, just some more of that stuff. This one, that one's kind of got a point of contention with me because I had somebody with that a few years ago and I knew that he was doing something, but I couldn't catch him. But I didn't know that there were stash pockets inside the belt, so I missed that one. So I won't miss that again. On the next one. And like I said, those are, you know, two of the main areas of drug advertising. Now, this is very interesting, and I'm sure you guys know a lot more than me, some of the other presenters, but sativa days and indica nights. So there's really basically two types of marijuana strains, indica strains, and they have different range of effects of the mind and the body. So indica, I guess the way it was explained to me is if you're going home and just going to kind of hang out, that's what you take. It's a body drug that just apparently really relaxes you. Sativa, on the other hand, that gets you going. Okay, so this one is obviously saying to us, hey, during the day we're going to rip it up, and at night we're just going to hang out. A couple other things is you can dab it. That's literally the difference between the two in terms of classification, the sativa and the indica. When you hear dab out, and this was interesting a couple years ago, everybody was doing the dab, okay? Dab, at least since 2012, has referred to the act of heating a sticky oil or wax concentrated THC extracted from the cannabis and inhaling the vapors. So what they're telling you is, I'm open for some drugs. It started in Atlanta, in the rap scene in 2012. Got to Wisconsin maybe 4 years ago, I think, with the big dabbing stuff. It's interesting that people didn't really understand what dabbing meant, at least in the drug culture. Next one. And again, Kush is one of the main ones, along with cookies. You see a lot of these walking around. Shirts like that, or stocking caps like that. People are like, Kush, and of course the guys just say it's for this or for that, but really that's what they're doing. They're advertising to other people that if you're interested, or I'm interested. So that's how people get hooked up with different things from people they don't know. They're actually out there advertising it right in front of our faces. Next one. No Bad Ideas, that's actually a pretty famous brand, but that's what it's about. And the hat thing, I think this one shows up in here. I don't know if you can see it, but that's really a well-hidden stash area on what I would call a baseball cap. Hold on. So on the shoe, and again, you wouldn't think that that's where the stash place would be. It's in the tongue of the shoe. There's lots of places they hide it. I've seen tennis shoes where they actually have the stash area inside on the side of the shoe, because kind of the tongue of the shoe is old hat. Most of the SROs in the state know about it, most of the cops, things like that. So again, they keep working hard to find different places to hide it. And I just want to end this by saying, listen to things that your kids are saying or that you're seeing on their phone, on their text messages. You hear about bombing, that's crushing drugs into a very fine motor, or very fine mode, and then they put it in tissue paper and they just swallow it. If it's called parachuting, if you hear, hey, we're going parachuting, which, you know, they're probably not, but parachuting is the same thing, except they're dipping it in water, then they're inhaling the same thing. Some of the other slang terms are Blue Dolphin, Route 66, Yoshi, Tesla. They're not talking about the car. They're saying they took a really, really high dose. So those are just some of the things that, you know, I'd like you guys to be aware of what's happening. It's it's really a tough deal to keep track of what all of our kids are doing all the time, because it's instant stuff. You know, they send this to this kid and it's gone the next day, and it's just a really, really community thing that we need to do to try to stem the tide on this. And I'll tell you right now, we're losing. You read about it all the time. I mean, like I said, we just, in the last month, we heard about popcorn lungs and things like that. And I have 3 kids today. And I asked them about that. You ever heard that? Well, yeah, but that's not the stuff I'm taking. There are so many things out there that that haven't been checked out or anything like that. I mean, they just caught some guy in Florida with $1 million worth of counterfeit ones. And then when you hear the term fentanyl, I think that it's either heroin or cocaine, that it's 100 times more addictive, and then it's 50 times more addictive than the other one. I forget which one. But, I just wanted to tell you guys that it was nice having you here. I hope that it doesn't upset you about this stuff, but like the tall cop says, we have to know what we're up against. And I think by having education and being here and taking the time, congratulations to you guys for being here. Thank you.
Okay, is this still on? So while they're making the transition, slides, what I want to start off by saying is that this is a small group. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you science. I'm going to share with you information that I feel is vital that you have. However, this will be a complete disaster, a complete waste of our time if at any point I lose you. So you're going to promise me right now that you're going to raise your hand and say, I'm sorry, could you say it again? Or what? You're going to not let me go if you're not on board this train. You all agree to this? Say yes. Yes. All right. Do you want to just set it up there and I'll answer it? It's okay with you. Okay, so what we're going to do now to get us started is We're going to start off with me, and then Tara will take over. We're going to answer questions. And I want you to understand what the genesis of these questions is. For a number of years, going to health classes, mostly sophomores and juniors across the state, and talking to them about drugs and alcohol, what we realized early on is, if we go and we talk at them, that is yet just another adult, blah, 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 and they completely tune us out. Rather, if you understand what they want to know, if you understand what their questions are, you solicit from them ahead of time, hey, teenager, what do you want to know about drugs and alcohol? Now you're talking with them. So that's the genesis of these questions that we're going to share with you. These are the ones that come up all the time. And sometimes they're the most argumentative and the ones that the teenagers are really engaged with. So, first question. I know it's number 5 because we're going to count down 5 to 1. But it's actually the first question. That was the first test. Did you pass? Anyway, kids want to know, what is the most dangerous drug? You got to know that in their minds, actually what they're saying is, what can I get away with? Okay, adult, I get it. Drugs, alcohol, bad. Yeah, I get it. But what's really bad? What can I get away with? What can I try and not be so endangered? So, let me tell you, this question is almost impossible to answer. Can I move this? Yeah. I feel like I have a dance partner. Okay. So, see, the thing is, if you want to say a drug is dangerous, or it is the most dangerous, you're going to have to be able to quantify harm. People across the world have gotten together in groups and tried to do this. They tried to quantify harm. They tried to quantify how dangerous a drug is. And so what they figured out early on, there's 2 types of harm that you would have to be able to enumerate. The direct harm makes total sense to you. It's the one that just comes to mind. If I pushed you really hard to tell me what would be direct harm, the likelihood of addiction, the likelihood of injury, the likelihood that you die from using this drug, that's direct harm. That's easy for our brains to enumerate. Where it becomes very difficult is the indirect harm. Great way for you to remember indirect harm. Last fall, someplace in Wisconsin, I don't remember exactly where, an impaired driver struck a group of people that was collecting trash along a county road. A young mother was killed. A Girl Scout was killed. How do you quantify that harm? That's harm. It's indirect. It's to the community. It's to the society. It's to the family. How are you going to count that? You see, it gets very difficult at that moment to start doing this. Furthermore, you have to take into account accessibility. How easy is it to get this drug? Whether it's illegal, illegal, does it have a legal age to it? How easy can people get to it when they're not supposed to? So access. What is the likelihood of addiction for that person in terms of the community? And lastly, how much is tolerance accepted? How much does your community, your society say, you know what, that person is addicted and it's okay with us. We're just going to tolerate it. We're not going to do anything about it. One group in particular put out a very large study of this, a very large thought process. They came up with the most dangerous drug is alcohol. And that's a little surprising to some people. What? What about the more pernicious ones like cocaine and heroin? Actually, think about alcohol for a second. How easy is it to get it when you're not supposed to? You got to know our kids are very good at figuring out how to hide stashes, but they're also very good at figuring out how to get alcohol. And they're not supposed to. What do we do about alcoholism? Not so much. Alcoholism is in my family. What did we do about it? Nothing. We just tolerated it. And that leads me to say, if that group was able to come to the conclusion, in the United States, the most dangerous drug is alcohol, for those reasons, then people, we are in trouble. Because we are being bombarded with an effort to legalize marijuana. And I guarantee you, based on the available data and available of thinking about this and talking and going and listening, marijuana, when it becomes legalized, it's going to be just like alcohol. And it's going to be on par as the most dangerous drug because it's going to be easy to get, it's going to have a lot of access, it's highly addictive, and our kids are going to use it, and they're going to be impaired. We are in for trouble if that happens. So, I'll get off that soapbox. Let's focus now on this dangerous drug, alcohol, for a moment, and use it as a model for what I want to share with you about the science. I think as you said, Ron, our biggest goal here is for you to be informed, because you want to be able to ask questions, you want to be able to answer questions. And one good way is to look at the issues of alcohol to help you with that. So, some teenagers will say, "You drink, why can't I?" And that really gets at why is the legal drinking age 21? They might even push it further and put you more in a bind when they say to you, "Yeah, but mom or dad, you know, I happen to know that when you weren't 21 and you drank, so look at you. You did it, why can't I?" You know, that's a stumper. If you're not ready for that question, that can be tough to answer, and you want to answer it well. So let me inform you. Is Sergeant here yet?
Not yet, but
Okay.
go ahead and address his point.
Yes. What he was going to address was the legal part of it. You know, I can remember well my father saying, "I don't know, it's just what the legal drinking age is. It's 21, it's what the law says." Okay, that's fine, thanks, Dad. But let's have a better answer. But in terms of that legalization, one of the really important pieces there was when it changed from 18 to 21, there was very good science behind why that was done. I'm going to share with you that science of why it was changed to 21. I want you to know this. I want you to be empowered with this information. Furthermore, I think it really gets well, talking about the legal aspect, to this issue of parents that host and whether you're allowing your teenagers to drink in the basement. And maybe you're thinking, you know, actually, I think that's a good idea because now I know where they are and they're safe. I want to show you why biologically that's not a good idea. I want to inform you that this is not a good choice that you are making. As a parent, you say to your children, "Was that a good choice? Did you do a good choice right there?" Let's turn the light around and shine it on ourselves. Is that a good choice? To say, yes, I'm going to host, and yes, they're only 16, 17 years old, but I think it's okay for them to drink alcohol. I want to show you why that's a bad idea. I think I encapsulated everything.
Wisconsin has a social host ordinance.
Ordinance, that's the word. I couldn't remember ordinance. It has an ordinance. So, it's against the law. All right, now, listen. Here's the thing. Information that maybe you were not aware of that has just, in the past 10, 20 years really solidified. One thing I like to say to my kids is, look, as a parent, it would be irresponsible of me not to ensure your good health, to ensure your well-development. Why would I allow you to be anything less than you could be just because I'm being stubborn about it? If I get good information, I'm going to use it. That's what I tell my kids. So that's what I would like to empower you with. What we're going to talk about is the brain and the science behind the neuroscience, the brain development. See, one of the things that's difficult for us to appreciate, things that happen in our body that we can't see, we can't feel, we can't taste, we can't somehow sensorially realize it's happening. And in your teenager's brain, whoo, big time changes happening. It is developing. So more than just child, you can cross that out and write teenager if you wanted to. Let's talk about what's happening up there in the brain right now as a teenager and what is known. See, the actual age that they wanted the legal drinking age to be, do you know what it was? Does anybody know what the actual number was? It was 25. See, at 25, it is quite clear that our brains, as human beings, our brains are done cooking. They're done developing at 25. But what they realized is that's a pretty hard number to enforce. Compliance is going to be practically zero if it was 25 years old. So they came up with a reasonable compromise of 21 because most of us in this room, most of us had most of our brain done by 21 in terms of its development. So that was a reasonable compromise. At 21, because the brain is mostly developed, at that point, the neuronal circuits, these cells up here, these millions, billions of cells, they're done forming their connections and being whatever that brain is going to be. There's better impulse control. You know this from your own life experience. After 21, you had better impulse control. You can say, yes, you know what, I had a drink and I'm good. Now it's time to do the next thing in my life. Decreased risk-taking is all about what happens after you're 21 going into 25. You have decreased risk-taking. And yes, as you get older, it takes longer to recover from the consumption of these kind of substances. These are all good biological reasons why the legal drinking age was 21. Something you did not know if you have a child, or even about you, about yourself. When you got to be about 10 years old, your brain was as big as it was going to be. Because at 10 years old, that's when this thing right here, this hard cranium, was done getting as big as it was ever going to be. So your brain can't get any bigger, but profound changes can occur within that hard, bony cavity. We're talking about structural changes. Those of you that know about computers, we say the processing power is always changing. Even in us, as fully grown adults, the processing power up here can constantly be changing. It's why we're encouraged to do reading and puzzles and mental exercises to keep our brains always changing the processing power. What I need you to understand, what I really want you to appreciate, this would be my depiction of the adult fully formed brain. It has identifiable regions. Those regions do discrete things. So please, play with me. I've been talking a lot, your turn. Tell me, 2 + 2 equals? 4. Well done. Do you realize what an amazing thing is you just did? Your brain, the temporal lobe, received my voice. Sensory information came in. That temporal lobe said, whoa, I just registered there was waves of pressure in the air. And it transformed it into a signal that was sent between the cells of your brain up to this part, the frontal cortex. And your frontal cortex said, oh, hey, I remember that. That's a mathematical relationship. That's an abstract thing where I take a quantity of 2 and I take a quantity of 2, I end up with a quantity of 4. I know that. I'm going to answer. And then a signal was sent from up here to the lower brain, the brainstem. And you took a breath in, respiratory system. And then you used your voice in the skeletal muscles of your face and you formed a sound. 4. That is an amazing thing you did. And it was all possible because of the connections within these different parts of the brain that have to develop and talk to each other. Do you see my point? Say yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Can I get an amen? Anyway, if this is the adult brain, this is the teenage brain. Well, 12 to 13 years old. This is something you did not know. A child from 0 to 12 years old, this is what their brain looks like. Notice that it's still got a lot of structures that are connected, but look where the structures are. They're not up here, they're down here, lower. This lower brain is called the limbic system. So these colorized structures here are part of the brain. It's the lower brain. 12 years of life, this is what controls them. Now why would that be? The best neuroscience thus far tells us we need from 0 to 12 that lower, we call it a lizard brain because it's a lower brain. We need that limbic system to control their life because they have to learn how to leave us. We hate that as parents, don't we? The thought that the whole biological reason for them to get through teenage years is they got to leave. They got to get out of the nest. So they're going to have to know how to survive. So it is said that in this lower limbic system is where your systems are to learn, to make memories, and know how to survive. It is the seat of our emotions. Really good question for you just to ponder. Driving down the road, you want to think about something? Why do we have emotions? Why must I feel happy? Why must I feel sad? Why can't I just feel one, like happy? Turns out it's very important for us to have emotions because they help us survive. We need to figure out what makes us happy and what makes us sad. And that's part of the limbic system. Our appetites, literally, what we like to eat, how to get it. Hormone integration, they are going into puberty. So there's going to be that whole cascade and storm of hormones as their bodies are changing. That's all limbic system. Now, what's supposed to happen? From the 12, 13 to the time they're about 18, they're supposed to rewire. They're supposed to no longer rely on that lower lizard brain. They're supposed to move from that control to this thing up here, the frontal cortex, the part that makes us functional, behavioral, mature, recognizable human beings. This thing up here. But in order for that to happen, you got to have a lot of neurons. The cells in the brain start making new connections. These connections are called synapses. It's really important that you understand this term, synapse. You'll see why. See, neurons, when they are connected, with your ability to say 2 + 2 = 4, those neurons that allowed you to do that, they do not touch each other. They are separated in space by a synapse. It's across the synapse that chemicals move. They're called neurotransmitters. You may have heard of these. Serotonin, dopamine. We are flooded with advertisements for pharmaceuticals that manipulate these things. This is how neurons connect. This is how neurons talk to each other, the synapses. Any drug or alcohol you wish to talk about, and I would love to talk to you more about each individual one, any symptom of cocaine, of alcohol, of marijuana, of heroin, any symptom or any effect you want to talk about, it's because it affects a synapse. It affects a neurotransmitter release. That's how drugs work in the short term. What I'm here to tell you is that there is incredibly profound influence long term, especially when you are going through that transition. That teen brain that they cannot sense day by day, week by week, year by year, the changes that are occurring as the new connections are forming. Those new connections are synapses. It is exquisitely sensitive to drugs and alcohol. What's not written here, and what we're going to add, I think, is coming. You want to know why addiction most oftentimes starts as a teenager? Not when you're an adult, but when you're a teenager? The answer is right here. If you have the consistent, persistent presence of drugs and alcohol while you are rewiring your brain, going from the limbic to the frontal to become a mature adult, take away the drug, that synapse can't work. It learns how to work in the presence of the drug. Take it away, it ain't gonna work. This explains why addiction rates start so much, the probability is so much in teenage years. Parents, it's not a good idea to allow your children to consume drugs and alcohol while their brain is rewiring. Not a good idea. Your likelihood of addiction goes up. Now, you will find people making comments. Oh, look at me, come on. I drank alcohol when I was 16, 17 years old. Look at me, I'm normal. There's nothing wrong with me. I have a job, I have a house, I have a family. What's all this fuss? What's all this business? Yes, you know what? That's a viewpoint, absolutely. Okay, so that's one person. Out of a lot. So when a person says, you know, good Lord, my child or my neighbor's child is addicted, what went wrong? I don't understand. Their life is a mess. Everything is destroyed. What went wrong? Addiction occurs most prevalently as a teenager. That's what went wrong. Don't allow small sample size, one person, to dictate the large message from a large population. I hope you get that point. So, what I'm highlighting for you is the long-term effects of the drugs and the alcohol on the synapses. The long-term effects. The fact that addiction most often arises in the teenage years with the consumption of these substances. And this is biologically the science why. Are you with me?
Yes.
Woohoo! All right. That was a resounding answer. What I'd like to point out to the health students, the sophomores, the juniors, it's kind of blunt and in their face, and I'm not going to apologize for it. I say to them, you don't have to answer me, but in your own mind, teenager, how do you self-identify? Are you a musician? Are you an athlete? Are you an artist? Are you a person who likes books, so you want to be an academic type person? Teenager, you cannot be that person you want to be if you're going to drink the alcohol, take the drugs now while your brain is rewiring. You can't do it. You cannot be the athlete you want to be. You can't be the artist you want to be. Now some people don't like that. They say, oh, that's dark. That's too, you can't say that, it's too categorical. Yes, I can. Someone needs to start saying it, and it's going to be me. And now it can be you as well. Why would you as a parent impair your child's development? That makes no sense. You instinctively protect them from harm. Let's protect them from this harm that we didn't know about and now we do. See? I hope I haven't offended you, but this is important stuff. So, let's play a game. And the reason I bring this up is I want you to understand that I'm not just talking out the backside here. There's actual measurable experiments that are very easy to do, very reproducible, and they show, they demonstrate everything that I've just said. It has to do with brain imaging. the new MRI machines. It is truly scientific fiction what they can do now. When they put you into that great big circular magnet, they're not just looking at the whole brain, they can look at 10 to 12 different parts simultaneously and measure the activity. And what they do is, they play a game with the people that are in the magnet. They say, hey, volunteer. While you're laying there on the screen above you, if you see a letter, what we want you to do is tap your finger. So volunteer, are you left or right? You're right-handed? Okay, so we're going to put this pad over here on the right side. So, that was well timed. I did not pay him to have that happen. If you see a letter on the screen, tap your finger. And so they'll do this. They'll show a letter, the person will tap the finger. Volunteer, if what appears on the screen is blank, don't tap your finger. And they play a game with it. They train the volunteer who's in the MRI machine. They say, okay, here we go. And they show a letter, and the volunteer taps. And they show a letter, and the volunteer taps. And they show a blank screen, and the volunteer doesn't tap. But might, but usually doesn't. And they train them. So this goes on for a few minutes. The whole time they're scanning the brain. They're looking at all those regions that I went through with you that allowed you to say 2 + 2 is 4. And then they say, volunteer, new rule. If what appears on the screen is a circled letter, don't tap your finger. Think about the cognitive load this puts on you. You've just been trained, letter, tap. But now you gotta go, letter, oh, wait, is it circled? Oh, it is, okay, I'm not gonna tap. This is a powerful cognitive load they just placed on you. And they just keep going. They'll show letters that are circled, letters that are not, blank screens, and you gotta know they set up the volunteers. So letter, tap, letter, tap, letter, tap, letter, tap, circled, tap, that's an error. So they play this game. The whole time they're imaging. And one of the things I need to point out, they will get together self-identified and verifiable control group, healthy brains that have not been exposed to the drugs, the alcohol. They'll get the heavy drinkers. So these are not the addicts, these are the people that binge drink. So they go through the days of the week, no consumption, you get to the weekend and they get really hammered consistently. So binge drinking, heavy users. And they have people with addiction, identifiable addiction, and sometimes recovering addicts as well. They gather all this data. Now, what does it reveal? It is said that the technicians that do this day after day after day, they can walk into a room and there on the table is nothing but brain data. That's the only thing that's there that's on the table. And they'll look at that data and they'll say, oh, that's a healthy brain. That's an addicted brain. Now this one's a little confusing to me. Is this an abuser? Is this a heavy drinker? Because I like a binge drinker? Because this one's a little confusing to me. 90% accuracy. They can tell who you are just on your brain data. That is at once incredible and scary, because that's a science fiction novel waiting to happen, right? But it's also incredible. Think about this. They are looking at, simultaneously, the sensory part of the brain that sees the letter, and it lights up. I just saw something. And then they measure the area of the frontal cortex up here. Well, I'm processing. Is it a letter? Is it circled? Yes or no? I'm processing. So that area lights up. And then, if a decision is made to tap your finger down here at the base of the brain, the cerebellum, that lights up. Because you have to move your finger, you have to have a motor program. So they're able to measure a sequence of activation. Timing matters. They're able to measure how often you make an error. They're able to measure how long it takes. What's the reaction time? You're looking at the letter, how long does it take to actually move your finger? These are all the pieces that they can get all at once, and the results are astounding, as I said, in terms of technicians. For our purposes here tonight, it is now appreciated that consumption of drugs and alcohol, especially in a developing brain, it causes a new brain pattern. People, this is measurable. This is not some abstract notion that we're telling you. This is a measurable thing. It changes the brain in a measurable way. The processing time takes longer because the synapses aren't formed as well as they should be. The error rates go up. The error rates, the times when you tap your finger and you should not, goes up. The reaction time goes down. This is all measurable data. It's real. It is why I am willing to be categorical and maybe a little bit too dramatic about it. because this message has to be out there. You have to be told this. All right, so, I forgot her name. Sarah from Sauk County, she gave me this image and I absolutely love it. It just resonates a lot with me. Thinking about your developing brain like you're building a house. Those neuronal connections that are occurring and the switching from the lizard brain to the frontal brain, that's building a house. How would you like your house to be built? Would you like it to be built strong with good connections, lots of nails and screws between the boards? All right, that's a little goosey, that's fine. How do you want your house to be built? Great analogy for what I'm trying to get across to you. All right, one more question, and then I'll turn it over to Tara. How am I doing on time? Doing good? I didn't need to take too long. I'm going to touch on marijuana briefly. Do you have any questions? Anything you want repeated or clarified? Please.
Anything about Europe and why are we like Europe? And let kids, wouldn't it be good to train the kids how to drink? Don't they do that illegally?
That's a great question that she's asking, and it's actually a question
Can you repeat the
that
question?
I'm going to. I would love to. I want to preface it by saying some of the most powerful learning lessons to me when I'm talking to these sophomores and juniors who are thoughtful people, they're not stupid. They get very argumentative, and I love it when they get argumentative because now I got it. Now we're having a conversation. We're trading information back and forth, so I love it. And what you are asking is exactly one of the things they point at me and they say, hey, what about that thing over there in Europe? In France or Germany or someplace like that, when the kids are 16 years old, they're having alcohol at dinner with their parents. We should do that here. Because that teaches me how to drink responsibly. That teaches me how to drink as an adult, with maturity, with my meal. We should do that here. I have absolutely no idea why we must romanticize this image of Europe. It's not correct. When you look at when you normalize, as you would do, when you normalize and you look at the data, they are worse off than us. This idea of having the kids drink when they're 15 or 16-year-old at dinner, it does not reduce alcoholism, it promotes it. It doesn't reduce ill effects in their health, it promotes bad health. It is a complete lie. I don't know why we romanticize it, but it's a false notion. It is a false narrative.
And then one more.
Please. I didn't pay her either.
If I can be drafted to go to war at 18, I should be able to have a beer.
Actually, at Lodi High School, I think 2 years ago, it's common for the students to get angry, to get riled up, and to be at me. This individual stood up. One of the few times a student actually stood up and pointed the finger at me and says, hey, I want to know what you think about this. At 18, they can draft me. They can put a gun in my hand and go tell me to kill people, but I can't have a beer? Come on. Someone else? Yeah, what about that? And what about the fact that we can vote at 18? We can decide government officials, but we can't have a beer? And furthermore, how about the cigarettes? I'm allowed to buy cigarettes at 18, but I can't have a beer. Come on, this is wrong. My response to that is, students, God bless you. That is very powerful thinking. Those are powerful arguments, and I cannot deny them. The thing is, those are sociological arguments. And for me, as a scientist, the biology always wins. The fact that I'm trying to get your brain to fully develop and develop the best it can be, that supersedes any sociological argument you want to make. For me, that's a great point. Thank you. Do I have time for one more? See, you got my brain going here. There was another time when a student says to me, it was the one time I lost my cool. After 20-some years of teaching, I'm good at not reflecting back at them. When they get emotional, I'm very good at remaining neutral and not reflecting back the emotion. But this one student says to me, this business about marijuana is all bunk. Didn't say bunk, cursed. Won't do that here. It's all bunk. Because the THC that's in the marijuana, that's a natural plant product. And now you're telling me that that natural plant product is going to be regulated? You can't do that. If it's a natural plant product, I'm allowed to consume it any way I want. And I just kind of lost it. I had to apologize afterwards. I kind of lost it because I said, brilliant, come here. Sit down right here. So, why does the plant make THC? What? Why does a plant make THC? You're telling me it's a natural plant product. Why is it being made there? I don't know. All right, dude. It's an insecticide. It's an herbicide. It's meant to kill things. That's why the plant makes it. It's why tobacco plants make nicotine. It's meant as an insecticide. It's meant to kill things so the plant doesn't get eaten. So way to go. Brilliant. Welcome to my world. You take that natural insecticide thing that's meant to kill people. Absolutely. Good job. I have to apologize. You can't do that. But you get my point. I was a little agitated. Which leads us right well into marijuana is safe though, right? Oh, I can't tell you the number of teenagers that say that to me. They're being lied to. And I believe the reason is economics. There is one boatload of money to be made in the marijuana trade. It's all economics. And they'll say, it's safe, it doesn't hurt you. It doesn't have those ill effects of alcohol, it's okay. It doesn't affect your memory. It doesn't affect your creativity. It's fine. They're just lying to you because they just want to control you. That is not correct. It is measurable. This stuff, marijuana, the THC, is just like any of the others. The alcohol, the cocaine, the heroin, any of those things. You are messing with the connections. You're messing with the development of the brain, the neuronal connections that are forming. It's just as bad. Furthermore, much like something you and I can appreciate, many of us as adults, what do we need to get going in the morning? Coffee. A cup of coffee. We are habituated to the caffeine. That's what happens really well with marijuana. You get habituated. You can't get going in the day. You can't get going with whatever you're going to do until you first have a couple of hits of marijuana. It's very habit forming. It's habitual. Memory and learning are impaired, absolutely. Creativity is absolutely impaired. They always want to argue, yeah, but I'm more creative. No, you're not. They want to tell you they are not. Finally, I really want us to consider these strong efforts now to legalize marijuana. Again, I think we're in trouble because the economic forces are so strong. Driving down the road, I'm hearing the advertisements, you now have the opportunity to invest in this developing firm where they're going to grow marijuana, or whatever it is, a consortium or something. I'm thinking, wow. Now they're advertising for me to invest in marijuana farms. We have to guard against that. Now, let me say, not written here, but let me say personally, I am not opposed to medical marijuana. Now your teenagers are going to say, you're a hypocrite. No, I'm not. For the following reason. When you go to the doctor, something is wrong with you. That doctor doesn't have to be a doctor, it could be a PA, healthcare provider. The healthcare provider has an arsenal of pharmaceuticals with which to treat you. And those pharmaceuticals are carefully controlled. They will give you an exact dose for your person. They'll give you exact instructions on how to consume that pharmaceutical and thus get the benefit of it. They will minimize the side effects. They will maximize the effect of the pharmaceutical drug. That's very different than you going to this dealer on the side with the stash in the hat and say, hey, give me 3 of those joints and make sure they're extra fat. Completely different, people. I am not opposed to medical marijuana. It is another tool in the arsenal. It will be given out in the same way that any other drug would be prescribed. So I'm not against that. But I am against the legalization of it because as soon as you legalize it, it's going to be just like alcohol. I'm telling you, we're going down the same path. How much bloody effort have we put into reducing drunk driving? A lot! And it's working. Drunk driving is still occurring, but it's going down in the amount. You legalize marijuana, it's going right back up. Because yes, you are impaired. That's another lie. Oh, it doesn't impair you. You can drive. No, you can't. You are impaired. We're going to have the same problems. So, what's happening in Colorado, California, we are not going to like the results. When you look at what's being admitted into the emergency rooms, what's happening to their youth, both psychologically, educationally, socially, we are not going to like what happens. So that is why I am against that. All right. Woo. It's a little dark. Are you informed?
Yes.
Say yes.
Yes.
Good. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Even just a little bit. Then we win. Again, I want to echo what Ron said. Congratulations for being here. You are doing the thing that not enough of us are doing. But now you have the information and you can spread it. You are an infectious virus. Go spread this information to those around you. And I'm going to turn over to Tara.
So I don't teach full time, so I like conversation. You have to ask questions, you have to respond. Deal? I can't handle one voice for another 20 minutes. It is fun. So our question number 2 is everyone knows not to smoke, but vaping is okay. So, I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of bathrooms, especially in schools, have turned into vaping rooms. So we have this nice, cute quote. Strangely enough, some students come here to put crap in their bodies. So, vaping is really just a different form of tobacco products. We're going to see a lot of the same chemicals, a lot of the same risks, and we're going to go through that today. But we are putting crap in our bodies. Just tastes like unicorn puke. So, we know that in 2018 we saw a dramatic spike in vaping rates. So we know 1 in 5 Wisconsin youth as of 2018 are vaping. It has not slowed down. We know nationally now, 2019 data just came out this week, we're at 27% nationwide for youth vaping consistently at the high school level. We know that they come in a lot of variety of devices, which Chris did a great job of covering. So, vaping's been around for about 10 years now. It started becoming popular in Wisconsin. Everybody remember when clean air passed around 2010? Yeah. Everybody remember the very old school looking cigarettes? It was just water vapor. It's on late at night. It was going to help you quit, right? Then we slowly got into probably around 2013, 2015. What we had were hookah pens. That's when things started coming in fun flavors, like Skittles, right? Then we're going to take it to another level. They're going to start looking like flash drives. The drill came out. That hit about 2016. It hit our markets 2017, and now we're at where we're at. Then there's even new modifications. That's the store and drop. Fits in the palm of your hand, super lightweight, and it's gotten to the point of even some of these next generation ones that Chris is talking about, where they will look like smartwatches, they will look like inhalers, key fobs, because adults have to hide their vaping use, right? Or not. We're over 18, right? Yeah. So, but the biggest myth we've been sold is that this is water vapor. Consistently calling vapes vapor, that this makes it give us the idea that it's water. There's a lot more than just water in these products. What we can be inhaling, even if it's masked and what smells like gummy bears, is tiny chemical particles. It includes fine metal products. So that actually comes from the devices themselves. These are pretty crappily made devices. Nothing's regulated. So the coil that heats up that e-liquid actually chips off lead and nickel. Little fine particles that can then sit in your lungs. Lead and nickel are both pretty poisonous to humans. It also includes discussing chemicals like formaldehyde and benzene, that we'll go over some of their common uses, and nicotine. So a little bit more than just water vapor. Some of these common household products, benzene is found in explosives or your gasoline in your car. Formaldehyde, everybody remember dissections in science class? Yeah, that smell, that's formaldehyde. Acetone, it's a nail polish remover. I will never forget being told in a chemistry class that if I got my face too close to acetone, it was going to adhere my contacts to my eyes. But breathe that in. Propylene glycerol. So this is one of the humidifiers that actually allow it to have that cloud. But it's also an antifreeze and artificial smoke. Phenol. So this is an herbicide. Do you see the garb that this gentleman has on? As to not get this in his lungs. But we vape it. Toluene is in paint thinners and stain remover. Diacetyl. So this is where when we hear about popcorn lung, this is one of the primary ingredients. The reason why we don't see this with other tobacco products is we ban flavored cigarettes. One of the primary uses for flavoring e-cigarettes is diacetyl. It got banned from being the flavoring for buttered popcorn because factory workers were getting this irreversible lung damage that then got called popcorn lung. We cannot use it for flavoring of popcorn, even though it's safe to consume, because we were killing factory workers. Because there's no regulation of vaping, this is what a lot of them are using to flavor things like mango and Captain Crunch and all the other flavors that are out there. So that's some of the bronchial damage that we can see from that. And then nicotine. I think Dr. Drew did a great job of covering all the brain chemistry that goes on with this. Nicotine is the addictive substance of tobacco products. Unfortunately, and what most people would, some of the propaganda out there I guess would tell you, is that there is now lab-based nicotine. So you have tobacco products that are covered by a lot of state laws, local laws. We did a really great job of cracking down on cigarettes, and we've seen our smoking rates come down. Now, a lot of e-juice companies, e-cigarette companies have created lab-based nicotine salts. Actually, Juul is one of the first ones to do this. Because of that, it's not technically tobacco, and it found a loophole in a lot of our laws. Weird, because they were working. So, now they don't have to follow through the same regulations until we get that caught up in a lot of places. I have been told buying vape devices for displays that is a cleaner nicotine for me because it's not from the tobacco plant. It actually reduces the harshness of nicotine. So what that means is why before Juul, one of those little Juul pods has 1 pack of nicotine, 1 pack of cigarettes worth of nicotine in it. So that little Juul pod has 20 cigarettes worth of nicotine in it. The reason why it's able to do that and why some kids can consume 2 to 3 to, I heard a national youth speaker say he consumed 4 a day before he went into rehab. The reason why he was able to do that is because it is a lot less harsh. So not only is the flavor masking a lot of that harshness, but nicotine salt itself is just easier for the body to process. But because it is, you can consume much higher amounts, which is going to create much higher damage to your brain a lot faster. We're basically in an arms race of vaping companies that are unregulated, trying to increase the level of nicotine that they can put in those devices, in those cartridges, as fast as possible because they know they'll get you addicted faster. And by you, I'm actually talking about probably your 13 to 18-year-old. So, unfortunately, that's where we're at with nicotine arms race of vaping products. And because this is not regulated, just because what you read on that label does not mean is what is guaranteed in there. That goes for the chemicals that are there to create it. It also goes for the nicotine level. Nobody is holding vaping companies accountable for this. The FDA has the right to do this. They actually just recently lost a lawsuit to a lot of public health advocates. So that will happen now, it looks like mid-2020. Even though we have thousands of people who are currently very traumatically ill with chemical pneumonia throughout the nation. We have 69 confirmed cases in Wisconsin. Though a lot of those contain marijuana, the reason why they can't tell you what to avoid is because none of it's regulated. They have to investigate every device, every juice, every single little piece because nothing is regulated. They can't hold to a standard. They have to test everything separately. So, regulation is important for our health. Does anybody have any questions yet? Any comments? All right. And one of those big issues with nicotine, like we talked about, is it trains our pathways for nicotine or for addiction. Unfortunately, we know that's not just going to stay to vaping. There's actually a 4 times greater likelihood that a youth will transition to traditional cigarettes after vaping. and it's not guaranteed to just stay looking for nicotine as well. These pathways switch pretty easily between substances. So though maybe the drug of initiation is nicotine, if nicotine becomes unavailable or something else is introduced into that person's life, that can switch to alcohol, that can switch to other illegal drugs. Those pathways are set up for that coping mechanism. Do you have any other questions for me? I feel like I flew through that. Nobody talked to me. Okay. Yeah.
I have a question. We've been listening on the news about all of the imitations out there, all of the jewel products that are black marketed, that seem to get into the hands, obviously a big bust on the eastern side of Wisconsin. What are we seeing?
Locally?
Locally, yes.
Locally? So I will say we've had a confirmed case of lung illness in Sauk County as close. I know Juneau and Adams are both investigating. Have you had any investigations?
I think someone from the school district, I don't know, Julie, would you know anything, or anyone from the coalition know anything about Richland?
So I'm just saying for vaping illness, because 80% of those in Wisconsin have been tied to THC products, so they're modified products. A lot of them have been bought online, a lot of them have been bought through black market. But I mean, unfortunately with how the internet works, some of them has been specifically bought in states where it's legal to sell and shipped to Wisconsin online, so.
Second question
Yeah.
related to that is, I hear that kids can actually incorporate their own drugs into a vaping machine and really tangle with dangerous things that you're just not aware of at all.
You can vape basically anything. So the vapes are in the hidden in plain sight display. We had an issue with a teenager vaping alcohol and he died, unfortunately, last year because you can't consume that much alcohol that quickly. But pods are modifiable. They're just legitimate pods that are adaptable to jewel made that have THC or CBD that you can vape. You can refill them. You can, once you get into the bigger mods or tanks that adults have, you can put dabs at waxy substance with a higher THC right in there. You can basically put any substance in there. And unfortunately, because it's heated at that atomized level, and especially with the THC concentrates that tend to be at that level, you're not going to get the same smell you would if somebody was smoking marijuana. We know that's a very distinct smell. It really cuts down on that discretion. And these devices are sneaky, so that it doesn't matter what they are. They don't emit that aerosol just sitting on. You can take a draw out of a jewel, you can exhale it when nobody's paying attention, you can put it in your pocket, and you can keep walking. That's just how it goes. So that's why, I mean, we've had school districts that have had issues in the classroom. They're not even waiting to go to the bathroom or the locker room. Personally, I'll just say, I live in Reedsburg. Reedsburg School District had 4th and 5th graders vaping in the classroom. So, classroom, not hiding in the bathroom. So, I mean, this is just, it's a very hard, discrete substance.
So when you say 4th or 5th grader is vaping in the classroom,
Yep,
demonstrate how they get away with it.
yeah.
If they have a hooded sweatshirt on, how are they doing it?
I wouldn't even really need a hooded sweatshirt. So, I mean, the reality is, all I have to do is take a draw when your back's to me. So if your back's to me, or my back's to you, I take a draw, I exhale into my shirt, I turn around, and all that's in my shirt. And because it comes in flavors, that Bath & Body Works carries a sense. It's very hard to know whether that is just my lotion, or that is me vaping. I mean, when it comes in raspberry and fruit medley, creme brulee, these aren't, what would you expect?
So one more question.
Yep.
So it's 3rd hour, right?
Yes.
So they left their house, they're in school for 3 hours. Why do they talk about why they're vaping at 3rd hour?
Right.
What's happening to them?
So, nicotine is highly addictive. I think we've kind of lost that. I don't know why we've lost that as a generation. I hear a lot of people talk about, and I think maybe it does start out as the cool new thing to do, but it is the 3rd most addictive substance behind cocaine and heroin. So what we end up having, this starts as just a way to be rebellious. Kids end up addicted. When we're talking about these high levels of nicotine, they're addicted. A lot of them don't even know they're consuming nicotine. if you meet a heavy smoker, a lot of them cannot go 8 hours without having a cigarette. That is what we're expecting teenagers to do then, right? So unfortunately, we have a lot of addicted youth that we're basically just treating as rebellious. Absolutely, it would be in their best interest to quit. Cessation is incredibly hard. If you've ever had an adult in your life quit smoking, it takes about 7 attempts on average. It is one of the hardest things most people can do. And then we're asking them to do it with no support in school, and they cannot use nicotine replacement therapy, which is what makes adults most successful. So, unfortunately, we're left in almost a punitive setting of trying to deal with addiction, which is not the way to do it. There are some text-to-quit resources out there, quit lines. Richland Hospital actually has cessation specialists, which is a great resource. A lot of communities don't have that anymore. So it's just really connecting those youth with the resources they need and really taking that restorative look at it. You know, what might have started out as something to do to be cool has definitely become an addiction that they're going to have to deal with for a long time.
So something that was really cool, well, not was cool, but it was notable, when we were at Reedsburg last spring doing this, and Tara shared that that's what they do in terms of how they hide the vaping, that they go down a shirt like this. When she demonstrated that, there were 2 adults in the back that said, "That's why they do that all the time." So there was a behavior going on. They had no idea that that's what it indicated. That's a pretty important thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's so easy to hide, unfortunately. It's not that our school staff don't want to interact with it. It's not that they don't know that it's a problem, that it's out there. The amount of kids that are using vaping products and how easy it is to hide, they are fighting a very uphill battle. So that's why it takes all of us. You can't just expect the school district to do it. Yeah.
I saw an article on the internet. Is it a good, true article where one flew up in the kid's face and they had a computerized made X-ray thing of him on there?
It absolutely could be real. It's happened a lot. So again, with not being regulated, not only the e-juice isn't regulated, the devices themselves aren't regulated. Because they heat up to that super high atomizing level that they make that aerosol instead of combustion, it's actually a lot hotter than what it does to do a fire. Because of that, they have very strong batteries. They're very poorly made. They don't have, the Juul doesn't have an on-off switch. I've actually had coworkers who've taken confiscated devices from different school districts to use as display items, and they start sizzling in their desk. So they've absolutely, that's why you cannot have them in your carry-on in the airplane, because they've exploded on airplanes. Yeah, they're just not safe. They've exploded in people's pant pockets. I mean, if you have a strong stomach, I recommend Googling it, but you'll see some pretty graphic images, so only if you really can handle that more surgical, medical type stuff. But it is probably absolutely accurate. Again, regulation's there to protect us. Unfortunately, it's not coming until probably around May 2020, hopefully, with FDA. So, any other questions, comments? Yeah.
Is vaping kind of an American thing, or is this like first world country?
Yeah. So, I don't have a great idea for how much. I think we're having a bigger youth crisis than a lot of other countries are. It actually was founded in China as a cessation tool. Unfortunately, the FDA has not approved it for that, and there's a lot of research that shows, though people might switch to that from smoking, they don't actually ever quit vaping then either. They just switch their nicotine choice. A lot of countries banned vaping because of the chemicals in it, or restricted it a lot, which made it lose its appeal in other countries. So, unfortunately, the US is not cutting edge on banning products or components of products that are not safe for us to some of our other counterparts. I will say that in other developing countries, smoking is still at a much higher rate than it is in our country. So I don't think they're very worried about that. And there are some new ones that have taken off in Europe that are now, it just got approved for US sale. So It's actually heating a cigarette, basically, and enos. So it's not vaping, but it's not a cigarette. It's just this totally new product that can come to the market because allegedly our standard for health is healthier than a cigarette. So 7,000 chemicals. Very high standard of health. So, sorry, that's not really Zoom.
It's all about the money.
It is all about the money. I think that goes for what Drew's talking about, what I'm talking about. Unfortunately, with the internet, we can be sold a lot of lies in a very pretty package, but I would really look hard at where that information is coming from. The reality is, we're trusting companies. I mean, in the tobacco industry, we've been lied to for decades, and it took us decades to catch on to what was happening to us. And I don't want to be here another 20, 30 years out and say, finally, I have the data that tells you that vaping is going to kill you. We just can't keep repeating this over and over again. Alcohol has been a health priority for Wisconsin for decades, and it hasn't gotten the money or the attention it's needed or deserved. And we can't go back there with marijuana or with vaping. So we need to take a proactive step because at the end of the day, we're just a dollar sign to the industry.
And so you're saying proactive.
Yeah.
How many people leave here at your meetings that you've all done for how many times? And they talk to the senators, the congressmen, you know, isn't that where it starts?
You know, some of it can start local, which is awesome. So, I mean, we have a lot of control over our environment, but some of it does have to happen statewide. If you want to meet with your state legislator, I'm your gal, so I can help set that up for you. So. But yeah, I mean, honestly, there's active bills for a lot of tobacco stuff right now. I guarantee there's going to be active bills soon for marijuana, whether that's medical or legal. And you have a voice, and you should know who your senators and representatives are, and make sure that they know your opinion. Because at the end of the day, that's who they should answer to, and not lobbyists. So, yeah. Perfect. All right, I'm done being doom and gloom. Hand it off to our next speaker.
Dr. Wright's here. I'll let him collect his thoughts for just a second. It's good to have you here, Dr. Wright. Julie, I don't want to put you on the spot, but having listened to what Drew said and Tara said, and then what Chris said, how you were able to find 3 today, is that something, I mean, how do you figure that out? I mean, how do you find this then and uncover it amongst the students in the school?
Most of it is students telling on other students, but I just heard an elementary student tonight while we were sitting down tell his mom that they're doing it on the bus. So we can't catch them. If you haven't seen the hidden in plain sight stuff yet, please make sure you see that before you leave. But those things are so little that they look like pens and pencils and flash drives, and we need everybody on deck for this, and everybody needs to be aware that it is a problem. And I know that Richland School District has taken if you're vaping, period, it can be considered drug use. Even if they're testing or not testing, they're just expelling them. They're not taking the stand that it could potentially just be a flavor or nicotine. They're going right to it's THC. Because we have to get that stuff tested. So we don't know what's in those vapes, literally sitting on Chris's desk from today yet.
So it'd be more than an expulsion from sports or being removed from choir. It would be moved from the school itself.
Correct.
Just a final comment before I bring on Dr. Wright. Drew, to your point, we had a chance to travel a little bit, and we went through Lake Hallie. And the first thing we thought about, this is where that mother was killed and the child. And so, the reputation of that community in our mind as we drove through, instantly, this is where that happened. And I don't think we want that to be the legacy of our communities here under any circumstance. It's a pleasure to be able to introduce Dr. Andrew Wright, who is a family physician at the Richland Medical Center, very much informed on addiction. We're lucky to have him and, of course, all of our physicians in the community, but particularly to be able to weigh on his expertise tonight. Dr. Wright.
tonight, but if this is the same talk we did at Richland High School, then I know quality and the interest level is very high. Do these just follow?
Yep.
Yeah. I may or may not follow the slides. Okay. So I've been tasked, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Betsy, with talking about how to engage young people to sort of avoid the path of falling into sort of a chronic substance use pattern, right? That's very different than experimentation. That's one thing to understand right off the bat. As you probably talked about in brain development, it's normal to experiment. That's, risk-taking is a normal thing. It's kind of what happens after you take that first risk or second risk. All right, so let's make it a little bit interactive so I can keep you guys awake. What do you think are some of the risk factors for going from just an experimentation of a substance? And when I speak of a substance, I'm speaking both illegal and licit. So we'll call substances, cigarettes, marijuana, alcohol, opiates. Those would be the main ones. And then, of course, there's stimulants and other depressants. So what do you think some of the risk factors are? You guys are smart.
When they took the illegal, they're actually stealing family members?
Yeah, what would be a risk factor to start that, do you think?
Pain. Addiction.
Yeah, pain, right? So having pain, and then having someone like me say, hey, you gotta have some hydrocodone for that pain, right? When we know, we have actually very good studies right now, even for broken bones, that judicious use of what we call NSAIDs, anti-inflammatories, will, in most cases, cut that pain, right? So being introduced to these at a young age. What are some other risk factors?
Depression.
Sorry, we'll start here and then we'll move to the emotions. What do you mean? Say a little more.
For kids, maybe things aren't great anymore.
Okay, so what you're talking about then is an environment that's not conducive to being accepted or loved and maybe turning elsewhere for that. What someone else mentioned.
Depression?
Depression, yeah. And what do you mean by that? So.
Like they're getting bullied and they're not, or they're failing a class and they don't know how to fix it, or.
So you're talking about depression with a cause, so to speak, right? So yeah, exactly. So there are things happening and they don't have the coping skills to get through them for whatever reason, right? And then and all of us do this, right? Sometimes we do things instead of coping, right? Or we cope in what we call maladaptive way. So one of my favorite things to do to cope maladaptively when things aren't going my way is to check sports scores. I know that's for me. Yeah, and then eat something, right? Those are generally maladaptive coping. Anything else?
Peer pressure.
Yes, right. So exactly what's on the slide here is, I have someone I look up to, I admire, and this, the adolescent age group, that is the age of your peer, right? We take a back seat, but we're way more important than you think as parents, but absolutely peer pressure plays a role. All right, so now we've identified some risk factors. Okay. I'm going to hand this out. So there's a few things, right? So childhood trauma is probably one of the single most, hand those out, just kind of share.
So
Best predictors.
I can make copies.
Of a experimentation becoming a habit. And you should know my background, I'm a family physician, I'm also board certified in addiction medicine, so I get to see a lot of people who've had different substance issues. And one of the not everyone, because there are exceptions, but one of the most common themes is there is an emptiness and a gnawing, and they're trying to fill that. And in one case, I actually asked someone for advice today. You don't know my schedule, so you don't know this person. I asked this person, could you give me some advice on how to talk about preventing it for teens? And in this person's case, they did not have any substance use issues until they were 32 years old. But this person traced it back to traumatic experiences they had as a child, which included sexual abuse. And in retrospect, now that they are clean and doing very well, they had an emptiness, and they had filled it in other ways that sometimes were more functional. They became a nanny, they did babysitting, they volunteered, they got involved with the church. But at some point, when that wasn't available, they turned to these substances and found, oh, the hole is filled. I feel what people who don't feel pain every day must feel. And that's what they did. A statement I always like to make in terms of opiates is, The receptors in our body that mediate pain, called the mu receptors, they mediate physical and emotional pain. So when you inject with heroin, you actually get pain relief from your emotional pain as well, and that's what makes it very addictive. That's one thing that's really important to understand. All right, so I actually want to go through every single one. I'll confine myself to 15 minutes, but I want to go through every single one of these questions because I think it's important for us just to kind of, we won't dwell on them, but these are the questions we ask. This questionnaire was invented by two family physicians in the Kaiser Permanente system in California. And what they saw was they had a hunch. There's a recurring pattern of people having trouble. And he said, I wonder if it's related to this. And guess what? Since the original study, this really hasn't been modified much. So they were right on the money. So we asked these questions. Did a parent or other adult in the household often, not once in a while, swear at you, insult you, put you down, or humiliate you? Or did they act in a way that made you afraid that you might be physically hurt? Did a parent or other adult in the household often push, grab, slap, or throw something at you, or ever hit you so hard that you had marks or were injured? Did an adult or person at least 5 years older than you ever touch or fondle you, or have you touched their body in a sexual way, or tried to actually have oral, anal, or vaginal sex with you? Did you often feel that no one in your family loved you, or thought you were important or special, or your family didn't look out for each other, feel close to each other, or support each other? Did you often feel that you didn't have enough to eat, had to wear dirty clothes, and had no one to protect you? Or your parents were too drunk or high to take care of you or take you to the doctor if you needed it? Were your parents ever separated or divorced? Was your mother or stepmother often pushed, grabbed, slapped, or had something thrown at her, or sometimes or often kicked, bitten, hit with a fist, or hit with something hard, or ever repeatedly hit over at least a few minutes or threatened with a gun or knife? Did you live with anyone who was a problem drinker or alcoholic or who used street drugs? Was a household member depressed or mentally ill, or did a household member attempt suicide? Did a household member go to prison? Now you can use this survey, you can give this to 12-year-olds. I wouldn't advise it for much younger. 12 and up. And you can identify then kids who are at risk, right? Who have had these experiences. I do have to, someone mentioned it, and apparently I talked to the school board. My personal bent is not just a personal bent, it's more of a professional bent. In a zero tolerance environment, you are not taking context into account, and therefore you cannot apply something in terms of justice. Let me give you an example. If you have your 5-year-old daughter, she's running around the house, and she accidentally knocks over the antique lamp and breaks it, would you punish her the same way if she looked you in the eye and said, Mommy, I'm going to bust your lamp, and she threw it on the ground? Would you punish that the same way? Absolutely not, right? So you have to take context into effect. Another big risk factor for people falling into substance abuse patterns is being expelled from school. We have to think of that. All right, now that we've talked about all the gloomy stuff, let's talk about ways to prevent it in the first place, right? When we talk in terms of public health, we talk about the lingo is primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention. Primary prevention is we don't want people to start doing this stuff in the first place. Secondary is they've been experimenting, how do we remove them from it? Tertiary is they're way into an addiction and we need to protect them from dying. You can use that for any disease process. So if someone has had a heart attack, well, you're already in tertiary prevention. If someone has had maybe a mild bump in their enzymes, that's secondary prevention. If someone has a family history, but they haven't had any heart disease, that's more of a primary prevention. So when we talk about primary prevention, I bet you guys know some of the most important things. Think of what would be ways to prevent kids from getting into substances as a pattern in the first place.
Don't have them in the house?
That's actually, yes, right? So they're not around. So you can think of that with sugared foods too, right? Yeah, don't have them in the house, right? Full disclosure, I don't mind telling you guys this. When do you think I first used alcohol? That's a kind of guess what I'm thinking. I was 6th grade, I'll just tell you. My parents didn't drink, but my sister did. And and she had it in the house. So that's a good one. All right. What else? What is the single best way to keep a kid out of substance use? Number one. Yes. Specifically, a relationship with a caring adult. Guess what's the second best way? Having a caring relationship with two adults. So, if you can do that for a child, you're well on your way. Now that caring relationship takes a lot of work. I bet almost, who's a parent in this room? Let's try that. Okay, so that's most of us. It doesn't always have to be the parent who is the primary adult in that child's life. It can be a mentor, it can be a grandparent, it can be an aunt, it can be an uncle. But it has to be, one of the most important things is that first encounter each day with that young person, right? So if I say to my son, as soon as I get home from work, did you mow the lawn? Did you clean your room? That's not a positive start, right? You only get one chance to make that first impression. So if I hug my son, ask him how his day went, then 2 hours later say, did you mow the lawn? Did you clean your room? Really important. So we have to be conscientious of that first impression. The good news is 24 hours later we get a chance to do better, right? All right, so we know that caring adult relationships, right? And then the second type of relationship is the positive peer relationship. Oh, thanks. You want to engage your kids with the friends they choose. You can't choose them for them. Everyone here knows the best way to get someone to make a decision is make them think it's their own decision, right? And that's true with friends as well, but sometimes it may take months, sometimes it may take a day, but you can make it known when you're not happy with one of their friends. You can restrict your kids. Specifically, when we're talking about social media, you want to restrict social media time. You want those phones downstairs at 9 p.m., 10 p.m. You don't want any alarm, you don't want any notifications heard from the room in the middle of the night. If you hear that, that is a red flag. Stop everything, get the phone out of the room. That's not a small deal, that's a big deal. Okay? So as parents, you need to have confidence in who you are as parents, and you can make these decisions. Set clear boundaries and try to keep them. Engage your kids every day if you can, and make that first impression positive. All right, what else is protected? Well, education does play a role. It's not as big as you might think. It drops usage by about 1/4 across all substances. So just helping the kids to know what that substance is doing in their body is also a way to help prevent probably 1/4. So for example, if 20% of kids are using marijuana, you could drop that to 15% if you kind of talk to them, hey, this interferes with your ability to form long-term memories. In a small percentage, this will lead to schizophrenia. Chronic use or use before the age of 16 does some permanent damage to the brain. That will have somewhat of an effect. What else? Yes, right? So having clear consequences. You never want to give up on your child, but yeah, if something, and this is true not just for substance use, it's for everything, right? Oh, you didn't clean your room? Guess you're not going to homecoming. Oh, you're going to clean your room? Fine, I'll drive you to homecoming at 8:30. So it's consequences, but with a loving, that's good. What else? Having something to do, right? So extracurriculars, helping them to develop a hobby, or you yourself volunteering to mentor them. We are lucky to have, I mention this at every talk, we've got sports, we've got FFA, we've got 4-H. I don't know if Ithaca has a chess club, but you want to have a broad array. We used to have that ham radio group. I guess that is sort of fallen.
Horse club.
What's that?
Horse club.
Horse club, yeah. So as many, we're really fortunate and blessed in our community to have these different opportunities and getting kids hooked into them. I know that there's been talk of a skate park. I know there's opposition because people think, oh, people just do drugs at a skate park. I would take the opposite approach. You're getting into another group of kids who love to skate, who I see down Orange Street, and I'd rather not have them on Orange Street. I'd rather have them at a skate park. So we have to think outside the box. We have to be non-judgmental, and we have to think about a wide variety of activities, and I think we do have it. So we're not really following the slides. Okay. Yeah. All right. I think I'm supposed to cover those strategies. So I get to interview teens alone. In fact, from basically the age of 13 on, I ask the parents after a time for the well child visit to leave the room. And we talk about home, we talk about education, we talk about drugs, we talk about sexual activity, we talk about social groups, and we talk about are they thinking of hurting themselves or someone else. Believe it or not, so when I talk to particularly young women, we talk about what if a fellow approaches. We know statistically somewhere between 1 in 3 and 1 in 4 women will be sexually abused in their life. That is an astronomically high number, right? And it's even higher in other cultures, but it's a reality. So learning to say no is extremely important, forcefully and confidently. Same with any substance use. Blame the parent, that's a good strategy. So this is something you want to talk to your kids about, right? It's a great strategy. Or you could say this, no, my doctor said I shouldn't use cocaine. So, talk to someone else and ask them to do that. Consequences, right? Just help run through it with them. Okay, Billy, okay, yeah, I see you had a few beers, we found them in your room. All right, what's going to happen if you keep using that? Run through it with them. Try to do it in a way that's non-judgmental, right? You may be very angry, but try to step outside, take a few breaths, say, okay, we found these beers, there's going to be some consequences, but let's just play this out.
Well, even before,
yeah.
my boys have already been offered vaping, and they said, no, I don't want to do that, because then I can't play baseball. So they knew ahead of time the consequences.
Yeah, and that goes back to having that activity you're looking forward to, right?
Yeah.
Gosh, if I get caught drinking on night, I'm not going to be able to do the forensics meet this week. That's very good, thank you. Yeah, this is a good strategy. This is one my sons have had to use. Now, I think if you have a life plan, it helps, right? Sorry, I'm just out of here. And that's it, that's the end of it, and they're gone, and that's pretty good. Switching the topic is another good way to do it. Yeah, and then as we talked about the education. All right, I think I'm almost done. So, the most important thing is what you can do at home. The school is a key component, but the parents, the grandparents, whoever is raising the child is the primary educator. But then I would say, thanks to whoever allowed us to have this at Ithaca, because the school is obviously an environment where you can work with the parents and really, that the teachers know, the janitor may know, what's going on with these kids. And you want to identify these kids. You don't want to say, I wish I would have said something about so-and-so. I wish I would have got them to somebody. So this is another personal story, but I think it's worth sharing for the educational piece. So I went to grade school in Kiwanee, and then I went to high school in Green Bay, and I didn't know a soul freshman year, and I was depressed. We had to fill out a little questionnaire, which I think these are really important. And then suddenly, I'm in the guidance counselor's room with my dad in the other chair the following week after we had turned in. And on my form, it asked if you were contemplating suicide. Yes. Did you have a plan? Yes. And all I needed was that conversation with the counselor and my dad once. That was it. So you want to identify, and these questionnaires are a good way to do that. And then having a caring counselor makes a difference. I think that's all I got. I am open for any questions.
Have you ever noticed, maybe this is way off topic, that there's any connection between concussions and substance use?
So the short answer I think is no. The short answer is no. Now, when you're talking about chronic traumatic encephalitis, the answer is yes. But that's an attrition rate. So that high school sports is changing, right? You're having fewer practices with, it's not the big hit. It's the attrition rate of a bunch of little hits. that changes the brain in terms of depression. So the short answer is no. Now, if someone, God forbid, gives someone with concussion an opiate, well, then the answer is yes. That should never happen. That should never happen. But the concussion itself, I would say no. We don't have evidence. Good question. All right. I have one more question for you. What do you do when you have a child who's already deep into substance use, whether that be vaping or alcohol or opiates? What do you do? What are the steps you're going to take? What's that? Go ahead.
Well, you know, you're going to get upset, are you?
Yes, you're going to get upset? Yeah. All right.
How dare you, I mean?
Right. You feel betrayed in a way, right, as a parent sometimes. Yeah. Well, sometimes when you're in this situation, money's gone missing, trust has been betrayed. You know, this is deep into it. Yeah. What's the next step?
Counseling?
Who said it? Yeah, absolutely. Counseling for yourself. You know, that's why we have Al-Anon and non-Anon groups. And unfortunately, you'll see how consistent the pattern is. It's very consistent, but that can be reassuring to talk to other people. There are times, if it's really bad, where you have to find a different adult to take care of that child for a while. And sometimes that can be different. And then, yeah, getting help. So coming to see us, that's highly important. And getting the counseling, and getting a team. You want a support team. That's it. And then, not giving up doesn't mean not being tough, right? Sometimes there's what's the name of that video that came out 2 years ago about those kids in recovery that was made in Wisconsin?
Silver Knot.
No, it wasn't called Written Off. What's that? Skip back? No. Anyway, a common theme in that recovery, one of them, and this is, you know, I think she was like 20, one of the turning points for one of the users, and actually almost all of them, was when they were literally kicked out of their house. I mean, you don't necessarily do that to kids, but when they, you know, and then the parent, they interviewed the parents, and the parents said the hardest thing they ever had to do was keep that door closed. So sometimes that is the moment. There's ways to support someone without giving them a roof over their head. I hate to say that, but sometimes when it's really deep, that's the direction you have to go. I hate to end on a negative note. So, so yeah, keep kids engage with your kids, pray together, play together. I know they're cliches, but it's true. And if you know someone who's hurting, they're at risk. And so trying to reduce that hurt will help.
Thank you so much, Andy. I just have about 5 minutes that I wanted to talk to you about how we're working on engaging the community in solutions. And Andy talked quite a bit about individual risk factors. We, as a coalition, our coalition is called Richland County Partners for Prevention, is looking at community level risks. And Sue has a handout there that just will describe, just in a nutshell, what we're up to in terms of creating change. When Dr. Lakuta was talking about the priority, the most harmful drug, our coalition did do quite a bit of collecting data and looking at the data, and discovered that our youth, in terms of their use, is highest with alcohol, followed by tobacco and misuse of prescription drugs. So on this sheet at the top, you'll see our mission statement for the Partners for Prevention is to engage Richland County residents to prevent substance abuse by creating safe and healthy communities. So we're looking at the environment, making it safer and healthier for kids growing up here. And I have a lot of confidence in this community to create change. We're already working in that direction pretty successfully, but things take time, don't they? So if you look at the sample size that we looked at, 427 high school students, 260 middle school students, a total of 687 kids, 11% of the middle schoolers and 28.6 of high schoolers report using alcohol before the age of 13. That's something we really need to work on, is reducing the access to alcohol from a community level risk in terms of socially and retail, from a retail side and from the promotion of alcohol. That's an area where we can really work to improve. You can see some of the specific risk factors, the acceptability, availability, affordability. And on the back page, you can see the process that we're going through to do that. Looking at the data, building the capacity of the coalition. And I might ask John and Sue, John Collins, Sue, Steve, Tara, Ron, representing WRCO, Julie, representing education, Heather and Shelley are all a part of this campaign. Meredith, in the past, long history with our coalition. Specifically, I wanted to point out one of the community level changes we're working on right now is that Richland County has not conducted alcohol age compliance checks in at least 15 years. And while the state does mandate tobacco checks, they do not, and they fund tobacco checks, they do not fund alcohol compliance checks. So can you imagine what it would take to change that from a law enforcement perspective, from a retail perspective, from a community level perspective? That's going to take a coalition coming together and saying, you know, we think this needs to happen because we're hearing that it's pretty easy to access alcohol, either by the retailers not IDing the kids or that it's pretty much a lax attitude in that space. We do know that of the 54 licensees in the county, at least 6 are not. It's an environment pretty lax around alcohol. So we can improve that. That's a specific strategy that is at a community level. If that's the norm, that's not going to be a space kids can access alcohol. From a social standpoint, if you look, could you look at the second page? I want to point out some things that you can do today to improve our top priority, improve the environment around our top priority, which is underage alcohol use. I don't have time to really get into what we're doing with tobacco yet, but if you join our coalition, we're working on a plan. Our next meeting is actually October 21st. We're working on a plan to look at the community level risks around tobacco. In terms of prescription drugs, I would like you, if you could do something tangible today, take a deactivation kit and get rid of any medications that are unwanted or unused in your home and dispose of those. Drug take-back day is coming up, but getting back to, you have a sheet here. You can get involved right away. You can go to Ace Hardware, partnering with them, thanks to Steve Kolstad. You can purchase one of these refrigerator locks, and that sends a really clear message to the youth in your home that whose alcohol belongs to. It's mine, and it's not for you to access. You can purchase one of those locks for the refrigerator for $16.99 from Ace. We want you to do that. We want our community to be an environment where the message is very clear to kids. Second, you can post a yard sign from spring until summer, about 3 to 4 months. In that time, we're looking at a new campaign called Not at My House. Our coalition will work on that up until the spring, and that will be an environmental change that parents are saying, it's not happening here. They're working together, getting that message very clear that we want their brain, their house, to develop healthfully. So what Drew had pointed out there. And then if you would like a prescription drug drop or a prescription drug lockbox, please indicate that as well, and we'll get you one of those. This will keep your medication safe and out of the hands of kids. So our coalition is working at it, and we want you to help us. whether it be these simple things that I just mentioned today, or if you'd like to join with us in creating community change. Those are the community level risks. The youth access to the social norms, whether it be retail or socially. We're working on changing the local conditions so that kids get the message that we love them, we care for them, and we mean business, that their brain is healthy all the way till 25. So, Partners for Prevention. Anyone from our group want to say anything? Sue? Actually, I would like Sue to come up here. Sue's our chairperson, so come on up here, Sue. Sue is a therapist at the Paquette Center, and she is our volunteer chair. I do work at Health and Human Services, so this is I'm an employee and providing technical support to this coalition. She is a true, caring, loving volunteer, so let's say something.
I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. This is a really good start. I really like the presentation that they put on, because we did this in the spring too at Bushland Center High School, and I think this stuff is really important to get out there, the knowledge. There's so much stuff, and there's even more stuff that I learned tonight that I didn't catch the first time that we did this. The information is always changing, and there's just so much stuff out there, and the kids are going to try and get away with lots of things, right? There's just so much stuff. Thank you, presenters, for coming out tonight, and everybody else coming out tonight. This is important stuff. So it just shows that the community cares. Want to help and do something about it. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Well, we want to be true to our word, and we said we would be finished at 7 o'clock, and we're just about there. Betsy right now is handing out an evaluation form, and please take a moment to fill that out. I think that's critically important in getting that feedback. And I hope as you prepare to leave, you're in a position where you feel that you are better prepared. Julie's coming this way. I don't know whether you wanted to say something about the sources of strength, but if we go back to what Dr. Wright said about caring adults, and we talked about what Drew and Tara said, we really have an opportunity to move forward with the grant and some chances. And really this is for everyone here and beyond, isn't it?
Yeah, sources of strength. Before I forget, I wanted to make sure I say thank you for the PTS Oakwood Food, Oakwood Food Farm for the apples, the hospital for donating, and the Kiwanis for donating for our Hidden in Plain Sight. If you have not seen the Hidden in Plain Sight, make sure you go and do that before we pack it up for the night. Thanks for coming. We were able to set all of this up through, again, our coalition. We can't do anything alone. We need everybody on tap for doing that. Shouldn't use the word on tap. That's a reference to drinking, sorry. But we do have something coming up. It's called Sources of Strength. Shelley, you're going to have to help me. The 30th of November? Community is
the morning of October 30th, yes.
Morning of October 30th. You are all welcome to come in and learn. I have to say, I'm so excited. We probably have 5 teachers that are coming. I told them that they could go provided we had enough subs. And we had an overwhelmingly large number of, Jessica's back to going, I'm going. And I gotta tell you, Ithaca has, for our day of training with our adults and youth, we have 6 adults from our community, which is about 3 times what Richland has right now, as of today, signed up to go to that to support our youth, to be trained all day. They're planning on going Wednesday morning and all day Friday. Actually, it's all day Wednesday and all day Friday for those trainers. But, I mean, that support is amazing, and it's still open to anybody that wants to come in. If you just want to come in and learn about Sources of Strength, it is an assets-based training for our kids. So what are you good at and what can you build on? So that when you have the child that's depressed and feeling alone, they have somebody that they can go to and feel comfortable talking to. They can learn that if there's it's very colorful pinwheel. If they're in the community center and they see a pinwheel on somebody's office and they're having a bad day, they can walk in and talk to the person. So it's a very visual reminder, the pinwheel, colorful pinwheel, and pretty soon you're gonna start seeing them everywhere, hopefully. That's at the end of the month, so Shelley's also registering for that, and that is through our mental health grants, and we've been very lucky to be able to have that for our kids. Again, this is a community, it's a coalition, we can't do it without everybody working together. Thanks for coming tonight. Does anybody have anything else you want to say? I really want to thank everybody that came and spoke. Some of you drove very far to get here. It's really appreciated, and we're all in it for the kids. So thanks, and have a nice night.